It began as an ordinary day in the Denver Mint, late January 2020. The machine's word, dies struck. Planchets spun through rollers' routine repetition, sculpting hundreds of thousands of coins per hour. Among them was a quarter, one that bore the design of the National Park of American Samoa. The artwork was notable, charming even a mother fruit bat cradling her pup in the soft lines of engraving. Another release in the America the Beautiful series. At first glance, it appeared to be just another commemorative quarter. No one watching that day could have anticipated what lay within the clatter of automated precision. As the weeks passed, these coins filtered into pockets and palms, through stores and soda machines, scarcely noticed. But buried within the masses, several bore an imperfection, a flaw not visible to the untrained eye, yet glaring to those who understood the secret language of coinage. It would take time for anyone to notice. But once they did, that quiet flaw would echo across auctions and collector circles alike. A small-town collector, 30 miles outside of Columbus, Ohio, was flipping through her pocket change while chatting with her granddaughter. She had a habit, harmless and quiet, sifting coins by ear, checking mint marks, pausing when she spotted something slightly off-center or oddly worn. On that evening, under a dim kitchen light, she squinted at a 2020 quarter, struck in Denver. Something wasn't right. The coin shimmered differently. It wasn't the shine, it was the shape. The text around the rim appeared shifted, almost doubled. But it wasn't classic doubling. It was crisper, more intentional, as if two strikes had danced out of sync. She ran her fingers along the edge, her breath slowing. This wasn't just a misalignment. The coin had been struck twice, once normally, then again slightly off. But what struck her most wasn't the doubling of the letters, it was the strange appearance near the bat's eye. A doubling? A shadow? It was delicate but undeniable. She placed the coin under a loop, heart now pacing faster. By morning, she had scoured online forums and message boards. She uploaded photos asking, "Has anyone seen this before?" Silence at first, then a rush of cautious excitement. "That's a double die," someone replied. Another wrote, "Could be a strike-through." But the longer they looked, the more mysterious the coin became. Professional graders would later describe it as a striking anomaly involving retained die doubling and off-center second strike. In simple terms, a rare and curious combination of minting errors. Some numismatists argued it was a machine doubling. Others saw evidence of hub misalignment. But one fact was clear: this wasn't supposed to happen. Especially not in 2020, when the mint's quality control had reached meticulous standards. As the collector mailed the coin off for certification, uncertainty swirled. The last time she felt this much anticipation was when she found a 1982 No-P Roosevelt dime, a discovery that funded her kitchen remodel. But this was different. This felt personal. The grading came back weeks later. MS66. Error confirmed, double strike with off-center rotation and retained die markings. But the name didn't matter as much as the buzz it began to create. Word spread fast. More surfaced, though only a handful. 3 from Georgia. 2 in Oregon. 1 found in a Florida toll booth by a driver who had no idea what he was handing over for change. At first, dealers dismissed it. "Minor error," they said. "Interesting, but not valuable." But then came the auctions. A specimen sold in late 2020 for $180. Another in 2021 fetched $430. Prices fluctuated, cooled briefly, then spiked. By early 2023, one error quarter sold for $1,200 quietly, in an online auction no one expected. The coin's fame was growing, not because it was flashy, but because it defied expectation. It was subtle yet powerful, rare but not impossible to find. That made it irresistible. Collectors now scoured change not for silver or war nickels, but for the 2020 back quarter. They held it up to light, scrutinized the eyes of the fruit bats, traced the rim for even a whisper of displacement. Coin groups shared comparison charts. "Look at the gap in the America lettering," one said. "Note the distortion around Samoa," another whispered. Then came the twist. A numismatist in Arizona, reviewing hundreds of error submissions for a private collection, found a coin that froze him in place. It wasn't just doubled. It had a ghost image of the bat's wing, faint, as though it had been struck by a die bearing remnants of a previous design. Impossible, he thought. The mint doesn't reuse dies like that. But there it was, a residual design pattern, echoing something unseen in other examples. When examined under spectrum analysis, the coin revealed traces of design elements from the previous quarter in the series. The Lowell National Historical Park coin, issued in 2019. How had the remnants transferred? Was it a retained impression from a retired die? A fluke? Or something else entirely? Speculation exploded. Was the mint experimenting? Could this be a transitional error? Theories poured in, some fantastical, others grounded. But all agreed, this variant was unique. One coin. One mystery. The Arizona piece never made it to public auction. It was privately purchased for an undisclosed sum. Whispers among high-end dealers pegged it at over $14,000. But no proof was ever released. The coin vanished into a private vault. Only images and a vague certificate remained. That secretive sale ignited further scrutiny of every 2020 quarter still in circulation. Suddenly, what seemed like a 25-cent curiosity became the centerpiece of a new collecting craze. Social media threads dedicated to bad eyes and ghost wings trended weekly. Children checked their parents' change. Retirees dusted off magnifying glasses. The U.S. Mint eventually released a bland statement. "We are aware of public interest regarding alleged strike anomalies in the 2020 quarter. While variations may occur, all coins meet our circulation standards." Noncommittal, vague yet tantalizing in its avoidance of specifics, coin grading agencies began offering error-specific subcategories. 2020 back quarter, ghost wing variant. Only one certified. Yet thousands searched. By 2024, the value of standard double-struck versions had reached a plateau between $900 and $1,400 depending on grade. But whispers of unverified variants kept the energy alive. One rumor suggested a quarter with both the bat error and a retained cut on the obverse had been spotted in a roll from a Texas bank. But photos never surfaced. It wasn't about confirmation anymore. It was the Chase.ata coin show in Minnesota. An elderly man held up a worn quarter and asked quietly, "Does it have the bat with the eyeshadow?" The dealer smiled. Everyone knew what he meant. Everyone was still looking. Even now, in 2025, the story of the 2020 U.S. quarter error remains unfinished. Some believe the real treasure, the ghost variant, was a fluke. Others are certain it's still out there, lying unnoticed in a forgotten coin jar, quietly waiting for someone to look just a little closer. And that is how a simple commemorative coin, born in the quiet hum of mint machinery, became a myth whispered across collecting circles. Not for what it was meant to be, but for what it accidentally became. A $quarter mistake, struck in error, yet echoing in value and mystery far beyond 25 cents. In 2022, the United States Mint continued its rollout of the American Women Quarters program, a series launched to honor pioneering women who shaped American history. Among them was Maya Angelou, a poet and activist whose presence on the quarter symbolized more than tribute. It represented a shift in how history found voice in coinage. Minted across facilities in Philadelphia, Denver, and San Francisco, the new quarters promised fresh interest for collectors. But none could anticipate what would unfold. At first glance, everything about the 2022 quarter seemed standard. The obverse still bore George Washington, though now in a striking new design by Laura Garden Fraser, a reissued take on her original 1931 concept. The reverse displayed Angelou, arms outstretched against a radiant backdrop of birds and the sun, evoking themes of flight and freedom. Coins flowed smoothly into circulation, tucked into change drawers and coin rolls, as millions rushed to secure the first in the series. But in the rhythmic churn of production, precision sometimes falters. A subtle anomaly, nearly imperceptible to the untrained eye, began its silent journey. Miles away from the noise of minting machines, a retired postal worker in Tennessee named Marvin Jenkins had quietly spent decades building his collection. He wasn't famous in numismatic circles, but he was meticulous. Every Thursday, Marvin would drive to his local bank, exchange cash for coin rolls, and take them home to examine beneath a magnifying lamp. His collection, lovingly housed in binders and velvet-lined cases, held rarities from as early as 1893. Yet Marvin wasn't hunting treasure, he was chasing stories. One afternoon in late spring, Marvin cracked open a fresh roll of quarters. The crisp paper split, spilling silvery rounds across his kitchen table. At first, it was just another scan. Check the mint mark, observe the strike, assess for wear. But then his gaze fixed on a Denver minted quarter. Something felt off. The top of George Washington's head seemed almost ghostly, like it was fading into the rim. He adjusted his magnifier, puzzled. The text, Liberty, seemed softly doubled, as if vibrating slightly in stillness. And then it hit him, this wasn't just wear. It was something deeper. Something wrong at the source. He laid the coin beside others from the same roll. Each standard one only amplified the flaw in his hands. There was a faint die crack along the reverse sunburst, and a second impression of Washington's profile overlapping, faintly misaligned, like a whispered echo. Marvin's hands trembled. He placed the quarter into a protective sleeve, scribbled the date, and wrote one word in capital letters: error. The numismatic world thrives on errors. Doubled dies, off centers, wrong planchets, they each tell tales of how human machinery can fumble. Marvin's discovery seemed to nestle in this tradition, yet something about it lingered in his thoughts longer than usual. Over the next week, he contacted fellow collectors, uploaded macro photos to online forums, and mailed an inquiry to a coin grading service. The response was almost immediate. It was a double die obverse, but with a twist. The doubling was strongest not just on the lettering, but in the subtle architecture of Washington's facial structure. His brow and nose, normally etched in firm relief, had a shadowed second line. Experts called it a ghost image, a term typically reserved for minor anomalies, but this was different. It wasn't faint, it was assertive in its wrongness. No one had reported it yet. Marvin might have had the first known example. As word spread, others began looking. And then more surfaced. A collector in Arizona, a teenager in Michigan, a flea market dealer in rural Kansas. But all bore the same features: Denver mint mark, early 2022 circulation, and that same ghosted obverse doubling. Still, no one could pin down how it happened. Some speculated about hub misalignment, others suggested a worn die that had escaped replacement. But another theory emerged, one that changed everything. A former mint employee, speaking under anonymity in an obscure coin podcast, hinted at an equipment calibration issue in Denver early that year. He spoke of an intermittent misfeed during die pressing, affecting batches over a brief 2-day span. If true, the number of affected quarters might be far fewer than suspected. Marvin's coin, once just another curiosity, could now be part of a fleeting and microscopic window in minting history. Then came the grading. Marvin's quarter arrived at the certification center in mid-June. He waited, checked the tracking compulsively, reread the email confirmations. When the result finally came, he stared at the screen for minutes. MS-67. Mint state. Not only was it a clean strike, but it bore one of the highest conditions possible for a circulating coin. The double die was verified, noted as obverse doubling variant D22A. The population at that point? 1.at first. No one knew what to make of it. On resale platforms, early listings fetched modest sums: $40 here, $60 there. But each week, more chatter built. A well-known collector on YouTube dedicated an entire segment to Marvin's discovery, drawing comparisons to the famous 1955 double-die penny. Auction houses began to inquire, and Marvin, now fielding phone calls he never expected, watched the valuation climb. In August, a second coin graded MS-68 appeared. This time, it sold privately quietly for a reported $1,200. That sale changed everything. The price surged. Forums buzzed. Marvin's quarter, the original, was now considered the discovery piece, a term with special reverence in coin collecting. Offers came in, $3,000, then $5,000. But Marvin wasn't selling, not yet. His granddaughter had already made a scrapbook about it, complete with photos of Marvin pointing to the coin under his lamp. By the time autumn leaves began to fall, the value hovered just shy of $7,500. And yet, just as the market found its rhythm, a twist emerged that no one foresaw. An independent researcher, specializing in minting anomalies, published a short piece in a numismatic journal. It was a footnote, really, buried at the bottom of a technical article. One noted D22 a quarter appears to show a faint clash with a reverse die mint for another denomination. The theory was wild. Could it be possible that in the chaos of recalibration, a quarter obverse die struck briefly against a dime reverse? Such clashes were rare, bordering on implausible. But under infrared analysis, traces of the torch from the Roosevelt dime could just barely be seen right above Angelou's head, like a phantom overlay. Marvin checked his coin. There it was, not visible to the naked eye, but unmistakable under magnification. A dime clash on a quarter during a new series rollout. Suddenly, the error was no longer just a double die. It was a hybrid mistake, a dual denomination clash layered atop an obverse design anomaly. The coin now straddled two worlds, a tribute to a historical figure and an accidental artifact of minting confusion. Experts began calling it the Angelou Echo, a poetic nod to both the doubling and the unintended torch silhouette. Prices exploded. A major auction house listed an MS-67 Angelou Echo quarter for an estimated $12,000. It sold for $14,800. Another in MS-66 condition fetched $10,500. The supply remained minuscule. By early 2023, the known population stood at only 19 confirmed coins, most in circulated condition. Marvin's remained the finest early specimen, but even that changed. At the Spring ANA Money Show, a collector unveiled a coin that stunned everyone. It was pristine MS-69, with all the error features present, and one shocking addition. The coin had been struck on a planchet intended for a foreign currency. Slightly thinner, slightly off-color, it bore the same ghost doubling and reverse clash, but its composition didn't match standard U.S. quarter specs. How such a coin came into existence defied logic. Theories ranged from planchet mix-ups to experimental blanks. The mint offered no comment. That coin sold for $27,000, making it the most expensive error quarter from the 2022 series to date. And yet, Marvin's coin never lost its luster. As the first, the original, the coin that woke the community to the mistake, it held a unique status. His story was written in every numismatic blog, in every collector's newsletter. A retired man in a small town, finding history under a magnifying lamp, he eventually agreed to display the coin on loan to the local Tennessee History Museum. It sat in a secure case, beside a magnified photo of the obverse doubling and a short printed story of the discovery. Children pressed their faces to the glass. Coin clubs booked tours. Marvin visited often, quietly, standing beside his granddaughter as she read the placard aloud for the 100th time. He never did sell it. The 2022 U.S. quarter began as a token of tribute, a piece of currency like countless others. But in the unpredictable ballet of machines and metal, something shifted. A flaw crept in, then grew into a whisper, then a story, then a revelation. a doubled face, a clashed reverse, a planchet that didn't belong. The coin told not just one tale, but many, each layered like the striations of an ancient rock, accidental, rare, and forever unique. In 2023, the United States Mint extended its American Women Quarters program with a new design honoring Dr. Sally Ride, the first American woman in space. Featuring her likeness against orbital paths tracing the glow of Earth, the coin echoed themes of courage and discovery. Minted in Philadelphia, Denver, and San Francisco, millions entered circulation with little fanfare. But amid this wave of tribute, a subtle irregularity slipped into the mix, a barely noticeable misalignment, hinting at something much more intriguing. George Washington's profile on the obverse retained the refined rendition by Laura Garden Fraser, yet one piece in a fresh roll of Denver-struck coins seemed askew. A casual glance revealed nothing unusual, yet under scrutiny, the top of Washington's hairline brushed against the rim with an odd flattening. Rolling the coin under a magnifier, the letters "In God We Trust" appeared slightly stretched, as though drawn by an invisible hand. When flipped, Ride's portrait showed a faint delineation of her orbit lines doubling softly, twisting like faint echoes in the coin's surface. Without realizing it, a collector named Elena Martinez from Albuquerque had found a coin that felt uncomfortably wrong in the kind of way that whispered opportunity. Elena, a middle school teacher with a modest coin hoard, took to her hobby simply and quietly. Each pocket change she tucked aside was a potential time capsule. One July evening, seated on her porch with the desert sun sinking behind the Sandia Mountains, she swirled her latest roll of quarters across her coffee table. One piece caught her breath. The offset in the lettering, the mild doubling, something wasn't right. She fetched her loupe, adjusted the light, and the subtle misalignment became undeniable. She exhaled, her pulse quickening, as she snapped a photo for a local numismatic chat group. She captioned it, "2023 Denver Quarters, something's off. Thoughts?" Responses flooded in. Was it die wear? Strike weakness? None of the usual signs matched. One seasoned collector suggested the faint, float doubling, fit a known category, but with a twist. This example showed the anomaly not just in the field, but crossing over into the legend and die lines, a much rarer alignment. Best guess, a hub doubling incident misaligned by mere microns. Word spread. A collector in Ohio posted his own find, another Denver 2023 Ride quarter, showing similar doubling though less dramatic. A rural coin dealer in Virginia confirmed two more, his voice tinged with excitement. As the total count grew, 1, 2, 3 collectors sensed this was no simple strike oddity, but perhaps a fleeting misfeed calibration occurring during a single shift. Theories formed. A former Denver Mint technician mentioned under patch, around late June, ahead of Independence Day, a routine equipment maintenance caused a slight die misalignment. Most dies were reset soon after, but a handful of through rolls slipped through before the correction. If the text timeline was accurate, the error window might be days, not weeks, a whisper of chaos in an ocean of precision. Elena sent her coin to a grading service. She logged into the tracking site daily, heart pounding each time she clicked the link. When the result came, her breath caught. MS68, with a clear note. Obverse doubling variant D23B, substantial hub doubling across portrait, legend, and rim. Population 2. Elena's was tied for top grade. She felt equal parts thrilled and stunned. She had expected maybe a silver dollar for this kind of rarity, not a modern quarter. As the grading posted to online platforms, the whispers turned to murmurs. A dedicated coin review channel on YouTube devoted an episode to the Ride Shadow error. The host compared it to renowned past errors: 1979 SBA double die obverse dollar, 1995 Lincoln cent double die. For a moment, coins in drawers around the country held their breath. Bids began in earnest. Elena's coin first went on sale at a boutique auction site. Initial asking price was $3,500. but the first bid came at $4,200. As the days passed, more collectors jumped in, driven by fear of missing out. When the final sale closed, the hammer price reached $9,800. With fees and premiums, Elena walked away with $11,350. She looked back at her porch, remembered the sun's last rays on that first evening, and felt a thrill she couldn't describe. By autumn, the Ride Shadow era population had increased to 9 confirmed coins small, but the distinct marker remained. 2 more MS-68s appeared, both in private sales of $8,000 and $8,500 respectively. Grading services listed several in MS-67, each sold in the $5,000-$6,500 range. Word slipped to mid-grade dealers, who described the anomaly as rare and instantly recognizable. Then came an unexpected twist. Dr. Victor Howe, a metallurgical expert, published a short note in a numismatic technical journal. He analyzed the Ride Shadow die with microscopy and discovered microlamination in the recess of the fifth in Liberty. He proposed that the doubled image wasn't solely a hub shift, but also caused by a tiny die fragment shift during secondary striking. Essentially, the die had chipped then continued to strike, producing a shard-induced secondary image. This created a layered doubling that couldn't be recreated digitally, and suggested each coin might also carry a microscopic metallic inclusion from the die chip, unique to each piece. Collectors grew obsessed. They began discussing each Ride Shadow coin's unique pattern of letters and rim characteristics, markers as fingerprint-like as earthquake seismographs. Even coins with modest doubling became collectible. Some sellers began offering coin pairs as a set, soft cap and hard cap doubling variations, each like twin anomalies from the same moment. In early 2024, a major numismatic auction house offered a complete Ride Shadow collection for lowest grade circulated specimens, 2 MS-67, 1 MS-68 tie, and 1 unique third tier coin purportedly struck on an experimental clad mix. It sold for $48,500, well above estimates. Industry analysts called it a sign. The Ride Shadow era wasn't just a short-lived buzz, it was establishing its own historical and market footprint. Meanwhile, Elena invested a portion of her gains into further collecting. She traveled to coin shows, giving talks about the Ride Shadow story, now lending her original MS-68 to educational exhibits. She described that serene July night on her porch, teaching students about unexpected outcomes and the beauty of imperfection. But even as the coin's reputation soared, Elena never forgot its origins as a humble piece of circulating change. She kept a lower-grade Ride Shadow in a mylar flip under her desk lamp. Every so often, she'd glance at it and smile, remembering a teacher's curiosity born from pocket change. In late spring, another horrifying discovery surfaced. A single Ride Shadow error appeared in San Francisco minted circulation. It carried the doubling, the microlamination, and most notably still retained bluish mint luster on the rim, hinting at a lightly tarnished planchet variant. That example sold privately for $13,200, cementing the error's cross-mint appeal. As of this writing, sightings remain few. 13 confirmed Ride Shadow quarters across all grades and mints. Values range from $4,800 for grade-eligible circulated coins, up to $14,500 for high-grade MS-68 specimens, and that MS-69 experiment-grade coin estimated near $20,000, if ever offered publicly. Elena's story ends not with an outro, but with that number. Her original Denver MS-68 Ride Shadow quarter sold for $11,350 at auction in August 2023. Today its value hovers around $14,500, held private, exhibited occasionally, and forever marking the moment when a modern quarter transcended mere change to become a symbol of hidden rarity, human error, and the thrill of discovery.